Alright, this is lesson 93. It's one of the last lessons we're going to do in this class, it looks like. So, rational expressions, we're going to simplify rational expressions. Rational means that it's in a fraction. Okay, so when I talk about, like, even the number, or 1/2, this is a rational expression because it's a ratio. 1 to 2, okay? What happens if I ever have a numerator that's rational? Let's say it was numerator that's 0 and that's divided by 2. What's 0 divided by 2? 0, right? Does that make sense? But what happens if I have 2 divided by 0? What was that? What's 2 divided by 0? Undefined. Do you remember this? Yes. This should be like permanently in your memory. Undefined, right? Let's say I had $0 in my pocket. This is a better way to think about it. $0 in my pocket. I want to divide it by all the students in here. There's what? 15, 20 students. Let's say I had $0 divided by 15 of you. How much does each of you get?
0.
0, right? Okay. What if I had a $20? What if there was a $20 bill and no one there to split it with? 0 people to split it with. How much does each person get? Well,
you get something.
Thank you. What's that? There's no people. We can't define the problem really. There is no problem to deal with because there's no people.
So definitely you get.
It's undefined. Does that make sense? Like if let's pretend there's a $20 bill. There's no one on the earth. How much does each person get? No, there aren't any people to give money to, so no, it's not even 0. It's undefined. Does that make sense? Kind of.
To be the richest man in the world.
Let's say you have. Let's say Noah's like. Okay, Noah has $20. He wants to leave an inheritance for his kids. How much does each of his kids get?
How much kids do I have?
Well, how many kids do you have?
What do you want?
How many kids do you have right now?
0.
0. So how much money does each of your kids get?
Undefined.
Right, because we don't know how many kids he has. So he doesn't have any kids.
But
It's undefined.
Like, if you're the only person you have a $20 bill.
No, there are no people. There's a $20 bill laying in the desert. There's no people on the earth. How much does each person get?
Yeah, you would be the richest man on
But you
earth.
just said there's no people like in the world.
Yeah, I know. Richest person on earth.
What?
It was a $20 bill.
So undefined really means that we can't really deal with the problem. So in math, listen up. Just to review, we can't have 0 as a denominator ever. That's really important for our lesson. Here are the steps for today. We're going to be dealing with polynomials and factoring, Xbox and stuff, and then we're going to be canceling stuff out. So pause the video if you need to write these down. I'm going to continue here. Okay, number 1. We got 9a over 6a squared. So first thing we need to do is define any undefined values. So the way you figure out undefined values, we don't want our denominator to equal to 0. So I'm going to take the denominator and set it equal to 0. I want to ask myself, how would I make the denominator 0? Well, I have to solve for a, so I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So a squared is equal to 0 divided by 6, which is 0. So a is equal to 0, right? Because if I take the square root of both sides, I still get 0. So that means a cannot equal to 0. What happens if a is equal to 0? Well, what happens if my denominator is equal to 0? 0 squared is 0. 0 times 6 is 0. So what happens if my denominator is 0? It's called what again?
Undefined.
Undefined. We don't want that. So a is not allowed to be equal to 0. That's the first thing. This is an excluded value, okay? Does that make sense? So now we have to simplify. So now we take our original problem. We're going to bring it down here now. So we got 9a over 6a squared. We're going to factor the numerator. I know 9a is just like saying 3 times a. I know our denominator is like saying 3 times 2 times a. So now looking at my numerator and denominator, I want to cancel things out. What can I cancel out? The 3's could cancel out. This a and this a could cancel out. Nothing else could cancel out, so all I'm left with in my numerator is 3. The denominator, I'm left with 2 times a, which is 2a, and a cannot equal to 0. That's it. Any questions on numbers 1? Well, just 1 actually at this point. Questions? Okay, watch me do number 2 one more time. Number 2, I want to make sure that the denominator does not equal to 0. So I'm going to take the denominator and factor it. So I know that this factored, I do an X box. We have 1, 4, and 5. I know that 4 times 1 is equal to 4, but adds up to 5, right? So this is just like saying r plus 1 times r plus 5 is all equal to 0. So r is equal to -1, and r is equal to -5. But this is what they're equal to in the denominator. What happens if these values are in the denominator? Well, it would become 0, so we would say these are excluded values. After we figure out your excluded values, you need to take your original problem, bring it back down again. R squared minus 2r minus 3 all over r squared plus 5r plus 4. Okay? And we want to factor, so we want to factor the numerator. So the numerator I'm going to factor, do an X box problem on the side. We got 1 times -3 is -3. Denominator is -2. 1 times 1 is equal to -3, but adds up to 2. It's going to be -3 and +1. So r minus 3, and then r plus 1. The denominator already factored, we said is r plus 1 and r plus 5. Now looking at my numerator and denominator, which ones can I cancel out? I can cancel out r plus 1 and r plus 1. Simplified that way. Then we keep the rest. We have r minus 3 all over r plus 5. Put a semicolon, we say r cannot equal to the excluded values of -1 and -5. That's it. Any questions on numbers 1 or 2? Okay. Is this making sense to you? Yes? So? Okay, so let's have the 2 still the ones about, well actually no, 1 still 2 is about number 1, and then 2 still 1 is about number 2. Let me separate them a little bit here with a line so they don't get confusing to you. Okay, ready? Go. We're trying to figure out what are excluded values. We take this, we can even just write a side problem. 25n cubed is equal to 0. We're trying to figure out what would make our denominator 0. We don't want our denominator to be 0, because what if we have a 0 in the denominator? It is what? Undefined, right? So divide both sides by 25 here. You got n cubed is equal to 0, and then we take the cube root of both sides, not the square root, but cube root, and we get n is equal to 0. This is something that we don't want. We don't want n equal to 0, because what happens if our denominator is 0? Undefined, right? 0 cubed is, what's 0 cubed? 0 times 25? 0. What happens if our denominator is 0? It's what? Undefined. So we don't want it equal to that. So that's called an excluded value. Okay, now let's keep going. Now we're going to rewrite the problem beneath this area. So we're going to go 20n over 25n cubed. Okay. What's a common factor that we see in both 20 and 25? 5, right? 20 is just like saying 5 times 4 times n, and then 25 is like saying 5 times 5 times n times n times n, right? What numbers can I cancel out? Numerator and denominator? 5 and 5, right? And what else can I cancel out? 1n on each of these, right? So we got 4 over 5 times n, which is 5n squared. Can't simplify that anymore. Then we're going to bring our excluded values down. We're going to say n cannot equal to 0. That's it. Super easy, right? Make sense? Yes or no? So? Okay. Let's keep going together. 4. Actually, yeah, number 4. Here we go. Number 4, first thing we want to do, take the denominator, set it equal to 0. So we're going to move it to the side here. We got 8k squared. Set it equal to 0. How do I get k by itself? How do I get k by itself? Divide by 8. So we got k squared is equal to 0 divided by 8, which is 0. So k is equal to 0. Okay? So what happens if k is equal to 0? What happens to my denominator? It becomes what? Undefined, so we want to make sure k does not equal to 0. Now we're going to get 4k squared minus 6k and bring it down over 8k squared okay, and I want to factor the numerator. What can I factor out of that numerator? 2 and what else? 2k, right? 2k, open parentheses. 2k times what is 4k squared? 2k. 2k times what is negative 6k? Negative 3. Right? Denominator's 8k squared. So how do I, what's a common number that I could take out of the denominator? Two and 4, right? 2 times 4 is 8, right? Times k, right? So I could cancel out 2 here with this 2 here. We could cancel out this k with this k. So all we're left with in a numerator is 2k minus 3 all over 4 times k, which is 4k. Semicolon, k cannot equal to 0. That's it. That's how you do number 4. Let me see your papers and iPads. Make sure you're following along. A couple more. Number 5, okay? Number 5. What's our denominator? What's our denominator? N minus 4, right? So let's take that to the side and set it equal to 0. How do I get n by itself? Or how do I solve for n? What do I need to do? Not divide. Is there anything next to n? Negative 4. What's the opposite of minus 4? Add 4. To minus 4, you add 4. So we have to add 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. So n is equal to 4. Right? So now we want to take the numerator 5n squared minus 20n, and we factor out a 5n times n minus 4 all over our denominator of n minus 4. Okay, so we just, from this step down to here, I factored. Okay, what can I factor out of the numerator and denominator? N minus 4. What's n minus 4 divided by n minus 4? What's n minus 4 divided by n minus 4? Nope, 1. So then our numerator is 5n, denominator is 1. So then our answer is going to be 5n. Semicolon, n cannot equal to 4. Does that make sense? Okay, last one, number 6. Number 6, denominator, we need to set that equal to 0. We got m squared plus 3m minus 4 is equal to 0. What's another way to write, or what's the factored form of the denominator? M plus 4 times okay, you have a paper and pencil too. Isn't this m plus 4 times m minus 1 equals to 0. Then each of these becomes its own equation. So we got m plus 4 is equal to 0, so m cannot equal to negative 4. And m cannot equal to positive 1. Okay, that's for the excluded values. Now we're going to take our equation here. We want to factor the numerator. Numerator is like saying m minus 1 times m minus 1 over m plus 4 times m minus 1. Okay. What can I cancel out of both of them? Good, m minus 1. Can I cancel out any more m minus 1s? Or m plus 4s? Nope. So now we're going to write m minus 1 over m plus 4. Semicolon, m cannot equal to negative 4 or 1. Okay? And that's it. So today all we're doing is simplifying these fractions. They're polynomial fractions. You have to find the excluded values first, and then you factor and simplify. Okay, this is kind of a hard topic for Algebra 1 students. A lot of teachers don't get to this, so I'm glad we're touching and talking about this. Any questions on our lesson today? Be good? Okay, so that concludes the lesson.